Thank you all for checking out Crime Culture. Today's story is about a 17-year-old New York native who vanishes, seemingly into thin air, on a warm, humid South Carolina night. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the morbid and mysterious, go ahead and fist bump that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on all post notifications. It truly helps my channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you haunting stories just like the one I am promising you today. All right. Turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself, because this is the tragic and deeply disturbing story of Brittanee Drexel. It was a muggy evening in late April 2009. The coastal air of Myrtle Beach was thick with humidity and the buzz of spring break energy. 17-year-old Brittanee Drexel, a high school junior at Gates Chili High School in New York, vanished without a trace during a trip she wasn't even supposed to be on in the first place. The search would stretch across years. Several people investigated and considered persons of interest, but nothing would stick until one man emerged from the shadows with a past too dark to ignore, a man named Timothy Taylor. Was he the key to solving one of South Carolina's most bone-chilling mysteries, or was the truth buried deeper than anyone dared to imagine? Brittanee Drexel was born October 7th, 1991 in Rochester, New York. She was your classic all-American teen. Petite, athletic, strikingly pretty, and full of energy. She had dreams of becoming a cosmetologist and a passion for soccer that kept her driven. But she also had a bold, independent streak. So, when her friends invited her on a spring break trip to Myrtle Beach in 2009, she was desperate to go. Her mom, Dawn, wasn't convinced. She didn't want her 17-year-old daughter driving over 900 miles to a party town with no adult supervision, but Brittanee had already made her decision. A decision that would prove to be a fateful one. On April 22nd, 2009, she packed a small overnight bag, told her mom she was staying with a friend, and slipped away into the night. Little did anyone know, she would never return. Once she arrived in Myrtle Beach, Brittanee soaked in the classic spring break scene, texting her boyfriend, snapping photos in the sun, and bouncing between hotels with friends. She was staying at the Bar Harbor Hotel, a place that, if you Google it today, might send a chill down your spine. While you recall a time or two, your lodging didn't quite live up to expectations. With a dismal 2.5-star rating, guests have described it as rundown and dangerous, filthy rooms, rusted-out bathroom fixtures, mold creeping along ceilings and walls, stained sheets, cockroaches darting across floors, and hallways piled with garbage. One reviewer even said the hotel would be better off being torn down entirely. Still, for cash-strapped teenagers looking to party, it was cheap, and that made it appealing. On the night of April 25th, 2009, Brittanee visited a friend staying at the Blue Water Resort around 8:30 p.m. This resort was just over a mile from her own hotel. Surveillance footage captured her just minutes later, around 8:45 p.m., walking casually through the resort's lobby and exiting into the night. She was wearing a colorful shirt and dark shorts, completely unaware of the horrors that lay ahead. After leaving the Blue Water Resort, her movements are difficult to track visually, but her phone data tells a haunting story. At first, her phone can be tracked at a walking pace as she exited the hotel and made her way up the street. Shortly into her walk at 8:58 p.m., she would send one final text to her boyfriend, letting him know she was walking back to her hotel. Just after this final text, Brittanee's phone data shows an abrupt acceleration, suggesting she had gotten into a vehicle, and then complete silence. Her phone went dark. The GPS signal was lost. The last ping came from a cell tower in Georgetown County, roughly 50 miles south of where she was last seen. No struggle, no witnesses, just a ghostly digital trail that ended in the middle of nowhere. Her boyfriend was immediately alarmed. Within hours, he contacted Brittanee's mother, who sprang into action. Her family drove through the night, desperate to find her. But despite the urgency, despite the manpower, there was no trace, no sign of a struggle, no discarded belongings, no sign she had ever been there to begin with, just gone. Dozens of interviews, hours of surveillance footage, volunteers scouring the beaches and swamps, yet no concrete evidence surfaced. Nothing pointed to where she was or what might have happened to her. A few days after her disappearance, on April 29th, multiple reports flooded in about seeing a young woman matching Brittanee's description on a bus in Myrtle Beach, but these could not be verified. By December of 2009, the Myrtle Beach Police Department claimed they had 3 or 4 persons of interest. But at the time, none of these individuals had any ties to Brittanee, leading this case to turn stale. By 2010, after following dead end after dead end, the case had essentially gone cold. But the FBI never stopped. Quietly behind closed doors, they kept digging. They believed Brittanee had been abducted, but without proof, they had no way forward. Then, 7 years later, in 2016, a chilling tip changed everything. A prisoner in a South Carolina facility contacted the FBI. He had overheard something, a confession, a tale so graphic and detailed, it stopped investigators in their tracks. According to the inmate, Brittanee had been taken to a stash house in McClellanville, a desolate town swallowed by the swamps and Spanish moss of South Carolina's Low Country. There, she had allegedly been held against her will, assaulted, beaten, and eventually shot in cold blood when she tried to escape, her body being discarded in an alligator-infested swamp. The story was horrific, and the name tied to it, Timothy Taylor. Timothy Taylor was no stranger to the law. At 16, he was the getaway driver in a violent 2011 robbery at a McDonald's. During the botched heist, the manager was shot. Taylor pleaded guilty to his role in the crime and received probation. But law enforcement wasn't finished with him. Years later, he was re-indicted, this time federally. Many believed it was a pressure tactic meant to squeeze him for information about Brittanee Drexel's disappearance, and it seemed to work. He matched the profile. He had ties to the area, a criminal record, a possible connection to the stash house, and he even failed a polygraph test when questioned about this case. All signs were pointing to Taylor. The FBI searched his home, interrogated him. The jailhouse story alleged that Taylor was one of several men who assaulted Brittanee before dumping her in the swamp. It was gruesome, detailed, unshakably vivid, but there was one major problem. There was no physical evidence. No DNA, no fingerprints, no trace of Brittanee at any property linked to Taylor. Still, public opinion turned fast. He was painted as a monster, a predator who'd evaded justice, but he wasn't the one they should have been watching. Technology doesn't forget, and in 2022, as forensic tools advanced, investigators took another look at Brittanee's case, and what they uncovered blew the entire narrative apart. A new lead surfaced, not linked to Timothy Taylor, but to a different man entirely. A 62-year-old local man named Raymond Moody. On May 4th, 2022, authorities held a press conference. After 13 years, they finally had their answer. They would go on to announce Raymond Moody, a 62-year-old registered sex offender and Georgetown resident, was arrested. He lived just minutes from where Brittanee's phone last pinged in 2009. His record was monstrous. In the mid-1980s, Moody was sentenced to 42 years for the rape of 7 young women, including an 8-year-old child in California. He was paroled in 2004 after serving just half his sentence. He would then return to Georgetown, South Carolina. In 2012, Moody was one of the investigation's main persons of interest due to his disturbing past and proximity to Brittanee's last known location. But without the advancements in phone tracking technology, investigators were unable to pinpoint exactly where Brittanee had last been. And without any additional physical evidence, Moody would evade justice for 10 more years until investigators questioned him again in 2022. It was then he would finally confess. And the story he would go on to tell was unbelievably horrific. Here is Moody's story. On the night of April 25th, 2009, Moody and his girlfriend at the time, Angel Cooper Vaz, were prowling the streets of Myrtle Beach, hunting for a victim to fulfill their sick and twisted sexual desires. When they saw Brittanee walking alone, she fit their profile and they moved in. They quickly formulated a plot that would allow them to get Brittanee into their car, posing as tourists. They pulled right up next to Brittanee on the sidewalk and offered her a ride back to her hotel. Brittanee, being the trusting, friendly person she was, generously accepted this ride. A choice she would soon regret. Once she was in the car, Moody slipped into the back seat and restrained her while Angel grabbed the wheel and continued driving. They took her to a secluded boat landing where Moody had set up a tent in preparation for that night's victim. There, in that remote marshland, he raped her, strangled her, and buried her body. Though it took over a decade, justice would prevail and Brittanee would finally be found when in May 2022, Raymond Moody led investigators to Brittanee's shallow grave in exchange for allowing part of his property to be placed in a trust for Vaz's grandchildren. In October, he pled guilty to murder, kidnapping, and criminal sexual conduct. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 60 years, this time with no possibility of parole. As for Angel Vaz, she was sentenced in 2025 to 18 years in prison for lying to federal agents about Brittanee's murder. And for Brittanee's family, they finally had answers, though these answers would come at the cost of unimaginable pain. Brittanee Drexel's story is one of heartache, false trails, and relentless pursuit. Timothy Taylor was never charged and maintained his innocence throughout the investigation. Raymond Moody finally confessed, and Brittanee, after 13 long, agonizing years, was finally brought home. In February of 2025, Brittanee Drexel's family would go on to be awarded $700 million in damages, though no amount of money will bring Brittanee back. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to comment your thoughts on this heartbreaking case, and if you're a fan of the morbid and mysterious, be sure to subscribe to Crime Culture, where I will be posting a new haunting true story every week. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on all post notifications. I'll see you next week. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.